everybody. It's Sunday again, believe it or not. And we finished up our series on prophecy last time. This time, we're going to go over some things in my quick references document, which is kind of it's called that because you can grab something quick from there. In online debates and whatnot on various topics that we have here listed, and each one of these you click on it, it'll take you where you want to go. And then I'm going to pick out a few things that are more common, and then we can go back through these in order if you want, or if there's anything somebody really wants to go over today, they can try to get my attention, because I shut off all my other apps when I run this, just to make sure we don't, I've done everything possible to avoid a crash. So we're going to start off with this ridiculous thing called the Piezo Roman theory, or Piezo family theory, Piezo family conspiracy. So if you go to quick references on the Dropbox link, I think Chow already posted that once, takes you down here. And all I did here was just link to a document that already covers it pretty well. This is a site called Tecton, and I should have had that blown up for you, but I didn't. There it is, all blown up. And we're pretty much going to go through this, and then we'll go over serpent seed, hopefully today, and theosophy, because it is the root of all evil, pretty much, and the claim that you are all gods. And if you can notice, I'm doing that group of things in alphabetical order. So, on the Roman Piezo theory, and this again is Tectonic's site, done years ago, and I checked other, even skeptic sites don't accept this Piezo theory, but I see people posting it all the time. The Piezo family wrote the New Testament. Utter hogwash. People who like to claim that never hold those alleged documents, in this case nothing, to the same standards that they hold the Bible. They just blindly want to believe it because, oh look, here's something I found on the ground that I can throw at the Bible. That's their motive and the depth of their research. So it's this is not me writing. This is the guy, I forget what his name is, that rates the site, but he says, back when I used to pick up copies of The Humanist for entertainment, I saw an ad in the back matter ads claiming undeniable, irrefutable proof that Josephus had authored the New Testament. The offerer was the Abelard Rougelin Foundation. Would be an overstatement to say that no one takes this group seriously, whose thesis is the New Testament was authored by members of an aristocratic Roman family, the Piezos, to keep slaves under control and in submission, while Rome wasn't that subtle, first of all. If they wanted you in submission, they would just go smash you. But, in fact, he says, I can only find one writer who even bothered to address their claims in any detail, and that, ironically enough, was racist Christ myther Revilo P. Oliver. I seriously doubt anybody's real name is Revilo. Anyway, this guy is an absolute Christ myther, and he doesn't believe the Piezo theory. All Oliver did was address a couple of technical claims they made. Apparently their thesis ignores that the Romans used very few of what we would call first names. As for the rest, he didn't consider it worth his time. So when the skeptics won't even consider your theory, it's pretty lame. And yet there are people online today passing this garbage around without any research. So it says, what few other challenges these ideas I found have been to merely describe the theory in one word or less as nonsense. I also found a message board from a member of the classics department at Calvin College, which said he had not looked into the Piezo site on angelfire.com. There's a bastion of hard research. But did say, I often use angelfire.com sites to illustrate to my students the danger and indeed the absurdity of using websites indiscriminately when they write their term papers. Some of the pages there are real doozies. And then another classics scholar from Penn, that's Penn State University, I assume. There's been a lively run of this on the Sci.Classics news group. The short form of this is that the Piezo family is responsible for all secular and sacred Greco-Roman Christian history, all part of a vast goof, or spoof we might say, performed by them on unsuspecting modern scholars. It reads like a huge collaborative parody of various things that he mentions that I'm not especially familiar with, but it's written like a parody. That's about as seriously as the actual scholars of antiquities take it. Skeptics of a more rational bent may also find this analysis by a skeptic interesting. Their summary: this is one of the most obviously laughable theories I've seen on the web. So we have at least, the skeptics I've found, plus he's found, plus scholars he's found, everybody says this Piezo theory is absolute garbage. Not because anybody's afraid of that the New Testament might be wrong, because like I said, these are skeptics. But because it's just really made up garbage, absolute fiction. So, those are the generalities. Now we're going to back up with particulars. Again, this is the Tectonic site. If you just got here, greetings to all of you. And what's this thing? I just can't control the scrolling very well. I don't know. Something about my mouse settings, but I'm using a generic mouse, so what can I say? So this is the Tecton site, and he says, one site that defends it says the following things. We Jews and church leaders have known since the beginning of Christianity that it was synthesized by the Roman Piezo family for the purpose of maintaining control over the masses and to placate slaves. Right, no, they didn't put them on crosses to light as torches in the evening in their gardens. No, they had to do something more subtle, which again, like I said, the Romans didn't do. Anyway, back to the quote. This is why we Jews are the chosen people. No, it isn't. And why we have endured so much for many years. We are witnesses to the lie. Absolute made-up garbage. They go on to say, New Testament church Christianity were all the creation of the Calpurnius Piezo family, who were Roman aristocrats. The New Testament, all the characters in it, Jesus, all the Joseph, Mary's, disciples, apostles, etc., all fictional, they say. Judaism's ethics and morality were incompatible with the hallowed Roman institution of slavery. Hold on a second. Didn't Moses have rules for slavery? Anyway, back to the quote. On which their aristocracy fed, lived, and ruled. They feared that Judaism would become the chief religion. No, they didn't. Repeatedly, religious-minded Judean zealots were staging insurrections against the Herodian rulers of Judea, who were Piezo's wife's relations. He wanted to strengthen his wife's family control, so they searched for a solution. They found it in Jewish holy books, where the foundation of the rapid spread of the religion. For the zealots' refusal to be governed by Rome's puppets. The Piezos mocked but marveled at the Jewish belief in their holy books. Therefore, they felt a new Jewish book would be the ideal method, etc., etc. That's enough for most people to dismiss these theorists out of hand. But for completeness, we'd like to put together a miscellany of claims from this group and check them out. This is from various websites. The foundational claim is, quote, the member of the Piezo family who started it all was Arius Calpurnius Piezo. He was a Roman general who captured the city of Jerusalem for Rome in 66, they mean AD, but they won't say that, who, collaborating with Titus, a relative, destroyed the temple in 70 AD, which, this is the only true thing they've said so far. But whether he was a relative of these people is severely disputed. In other words, it's a fabrication. In fact, both Zella, religious center of Pontus, and Jerusalem were the sites of temples that were destroyed by Julius Caesar, destroyed the one in Zella in 47. From here it is noted, that's the end of that quote, from here it is noted that this Arius is none other than Flavius Josephus himself. This is what they're claiming, that Josephus used pseudonyms and was actually the author of the New Testament, which is absolute garbage. Goes on from there, but let's pause. It seems rather curious that a net search of the name Arius Calpurnius Piezo turns up nothing, except websites that promote or support this theory. They're passing it between each other. So everything you find, and you'll find a lot of stuff promoting this in the top page of your searches, no matter which search engine you use, but they're all sharing the same made-up story. The name turns up nowhere on any site dedicated to Roman history, Latin studies, or anywhere having to do with serious scholarship. This is fairly telling because the existence of this fellow seems to be a route for many facets of this theory. And listen to this garbage that they make up. This is an example, I'm only reading it because it's such an example of absolute bargain basement theology, if you can even call it that. They quote Revelation 1:8 as saying Alpha and Omega, beginning and end, means Arius, Calpurnius, Piezo begins with Alpha and ends with Omega. Now, could this be another way of Jesus, the Lord, saying, I am Arius, Piezo? You see this not logic? People argue this way all the time. They have no idea what logic is. So they make up this general rule that you can substitute Arius, Piezo whenever the Lord is referenced to in the New Testament. I'm not even kidding. This is what they say, the people promoting this theory. Then they go to Revelation 13:18. That says about the number of the beast, 666. They say the man is both Jesus Christ and Arius, Calpurnius, Piezo. The number of a man. This is blasphemy. They're calling Jesus the Antichrist. The number was expressed as Greek characters. Not always. Sometimes it's written out. As we might write the word 6, the word 100, the word 60, and the word 6 again. Or write it as 3 digits, 6. We can write it either way, and so did the ancient Greek manuscripts. Anyway, ancient Greek had no cipher number 0 through 9. That's the second, only the second true thing they've said. As we have today, instead numbers were expressed along with characters. Well, they would use in addition to writing out the whole world, they would use more like an acronym, we would think of it as the beginning letters that would stand for those numbers. Anyway, they say that the words were he, stigma, and I don't know why they pronounced or wrote this two different ways, because it's the same thing. He is how you pronounce XE or XI. Anyway, and it's not stigma. It's sigma or sigma. I think they I don't know who miswrote it, if it's a bad, the quote was that way or not. Anyway, historically stood for Christ. They're talking about the he-ro symbol. That's historically, not biblically. Because of the sound of it and because it appeared as a Greek cross, perhaps. Could the numbers be put together? Could they? In other words, they're saying, we're not actually claiming, we're just raising the question. And this is how disingenuous people will get you to pass their ideas around without ever taking blame for those ideas, because they can technically say they didn't say this. They just ask the question. But that's how you put ideas in people's heads. And let them fill in the blanks. Never fall for that. Could it be 666 means Christ is Arius, Piezo? Wow, what a leap. This is like one of those, a little kid that sees a maze for the first time, on paper. They're just supposed to trace their crayon through and find it, and they just scribble all over and say, there, I solved it. This is exactly what they did. It's just that level of intellect. So then they, again, ask us a question. Is it an accident that the initials JC, which only works in English, mean Julius Caesar? Is it an accident that the name given Jerusalem by Arius, Piezo in 66 was Jupiter Capitolandium? Another JC. Look at all those JCs. Wow, I found something. End of that ridiculous quote. Another promoting site says, Vitellius took control over the empire as emperor. He was killed soon afterwards by Arius, Calpurnius, Piezo. But not according to Suetonius, who in the 12 Caesars records that Vitellius was killed by a group of soldiers who performed various atrocities on him before throwing his body into the Tiber. No, Arius makes as much as a bow. That is to say, everything these people say about the Piezo family is a fabrication, a lie. This quote-unquote Arius is also said to have headed Roman forces along with Titus laying siege to Jerusalem, yet Josephus makes no mention of such an Arius. And though we'd guess that's because he was Arius and trying to hide it, and now We'd like the reader to note that there is no citation or source given for this information, which is apparently typical for this consortium, that is to say, the people all passing this around. People are invented from this Piezo family based on no more than a whim and perhaps a presumption of an embedded code in the New Testament. This is one of the dangers of looking for Bible codes. To put it simply, there's no evidence outside the theory that Arius Piezo actually existed. These are the same people who say that Jesus never existed, even though secular sources agree that he did. Even some leading atheists agree that he did. That there's even Wiki says there's no dispute among scholars that Jesus existed, and the two facts they go on are his baptism in the Jordan River and his sentencing to execution by Pontius Pilate. These are historical records outside the Bible that match what the Bible says. Jesus existed, no doubt about that, but this Piezo guy didn't. Yet the people who will push this theory are the ones who say Jesus was the myth and not this Piezo. Again, based on nothing but lies. Then they have another claim, which I don't know if I'll read through. I guess I might have time. Around the end of the reign of Hadrian, after 135 AD, Piezo, the son of Arius, made a big mistake. He conquered the Jews at Masada, after which the Jews scattered. This was the infamous diaspora. It is a stunning if brutal victory, and Julius wanted to make the most of it, so he asked Hadrian to make his son successor to the emperor, knowing full well that if Hadrian refused, Julius would be obliged to commit suicide, and Hadrian refused. Quite confusion here, since Masada was the last stand for the Jews in 73 AD, not in the time of Hadrian, and a diaspora refers to Jews scattered among the nations even long before 70 AD. Not that it matters, because this Julius seems to be another invention of the theory. There was indeed a Julius Piezo, who was mentioned in a letter of Pliny, but he had nothing to do with the Jewish war. The Roman commander at Masada was named Silva, according to Josephus in his book on war. We're told that this Julius also wrote the book of Revelation. Like Arius, though, he is a phantom. Nothing but phantoms here. And a part of this package, he says, is numerology. We've already gone a little bit of that, and they, full of clues, they say, names and numbers and made-up stuff. In case you're wondering how this was arranged, it seems to be part of the plan that the Piezos also orchestrated our system of reckoning years and numbering them. Nope, there's no evidence for that. So, like, if you divide 15 by 3, you get 3 5s. The Roman numeral for 5 is V. Thus, the day of Caesar's death contains 3 V's, referring to his fate, Veni, Vidi, Vici, which is, I came, I saw, I conquered. This is how not to do logic. I mean, seriously. Then they go on to say Caesar was stabbed 23 times. There's 23 letters in the Latin alphabet of his day. So we're supposed to use Latin as a cipher. Remember what I'm reading here the next time somebody says Bible codes. I don't care if they're about the Old Testament. It's the same convoluted non-logic, anti-logic, I would call it. Apparently any number is fair game here, and any way it can be associated is fair game. Julius Caesar is a real important person for this thesis. Here's another example, noting his famous phrase that I just said, the infamous number 666 is the same thing. They're saying, oh, get it? Yes, you will say that 666 is really this number, and that it can be represented as this, and the Piezos were very clever, these people they made up. They knew people would throw themselves off the track by their need to be literal. This is an attack on Bible literalism, or, as it's known in any other document, reading comprehension. Heaven forbid that you should take words at their meanings, but you must look under the surface for something other than what they say. This is the standard attack, and going back to the lie of the serpent in the Garden of Eden, did God really say? That's all this is. That's the answer for when the data doesn't cooperate. It was actually a very clever way of hiding things from people not in on the joke. Then they go on some more examples here. Rearrange the pieces. It still doesn't work. About him coming in the clouds and every eye will see him and those who pierced him. So they have to reinterpret the words. They say pierced means conquered. And they're talking not about Jesus, but about Jerusalem. and an assassination that happened 3 years later, and they saw him coming with troops and pierced him 23 times. This is how you don't do reading comprehension, or logic, or research. Excuse me. So, pierced is conquered, and it took place over 3 years. Then they do some more creativity here, turning water into wine. That it has something to do with urination, which is really disgusting. Yeah, and they're just showing what their true colors are. So you won't find any documentation of such a phrase used by the Romans. They made that up, again, like they made up everything else. But we wonder whether the priest of Dionysus would have caught on, and as just, all the other things that they're talking about, that apparently they were smarter than all the adepts in the land at that time. In Latin, another quote, the word pistor, baker, was like the word epos, used by the Piezo family to refer to themselves. Could it be that when we read in the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread, we're actually reading a request for more bread from the Piezo family bakery that cooked up the Jesus story? No. Absolutely not. So they say yes, and Piezo is like pistis, or the faith we're to have in Jesus. Gosh, there's a little overlap in syllables here. Isn't it useful how the Greek and Latin languages evolved so conveniently for this scheme? Some other ideas include that Emperor Trajan wrote as Plutarch, Pliny wrote the pastoral letters, and actually died in battle against the Jews, fighting under a different name. A son of Arius, Josephus, wrote the Gospel of John and wrote as Justin Martyr. But wait, there's more. That's all these kinds of claims deserve. But wait, there's more. This is snake oil salesman. And again, when you encounter somebody saying the Piezos wrote the New Testament, laugh them to scorn and show them this article. Oh, by the way, I don't know if Chow got you that. I mean, you could get it from the document, but here's the direct link. But wait, there's more. Is it a coincidence that the Piezo family originated in Pontus, and there's a character in the New Testament named Pontius Pilate? Wow. The Latin name of the Black Sea was Pontus Eucanis. Did you ever wonder where... There's another... Again, with their questions. Did you ever wonder where the name Pontius Pilate came from? Perhaps it was... They're not making any claims, right? To commemorate the origins of the Piezo family. Not a shred of documentation, if offered, for any of these claims. And if you wonder... Here's a question of our own. If you wonder whether they care that Pontius, not Pontus Pilate, is regarded as a real person by Tacitus, we should note that Tacitus was thought to be in on this conspiracy as well. Not only that, but the English language. I see a lot of people claiming to be awake, disparaging the English language as something evil. Quote, I'm not sure if this means anything, hedging their bets again, but the word fool is used exactly 66 times in the King James. Always it's the King James. Which, it goes back to that Mandela nonsense as well. Always it's the King James. 57 times in the Old. The New Testament writers would have to make up 9 uses of the word fool to make it come out. What? The problem here is that the King James translates a few different words as fool. And there's at least 4 different ones, 2 in the Greek. But maybe the King James translators were Piezos also. In fact, we'll see something like this suggested by the lead theorist below. Curious Jesus. They interchange the words that they use when they say Lord, sometimes using despotes, which is the word despot, but mostly using curie or kurios, meaning not only Lord, but also... No, it does not also mean curious, strange, or mysterious. Not in Greek. It meant Lord, Master, Sir, and the feminine form meant... like they would, in English would say lady as equivalent to Lord, and master. This 2 John is actually written to the chosen master, not to some lady named Curia. That's the lengths to which people will go with a prejudice against women. But I digress. So it does not mean any of these things. Anyway, they say this thing they made up is a big hint at what they were doing, especially mentioned in conjunction with statements such as the mystery of the Gospels. Now, taking a Latin word, curia, and turning into masculine form in Greek. No, the Greek came before the Latin. This is just too stupid to read. And as they say here at the end of the quote, kurios, Lord in Greek, matched with curious in English, not hardly. We have been advised that curious comes from a word kuriosis, or kuriosis, which means conscientious. It has no linguistic derivation from the Greek kurios. That's what facts will tell you. Then they go on to say the Abba issue in the New Testament. Jesus dying on the cross called out to God using the word Abba, which is Aramaic for father. And lo and behold, we find Josephus using the same word when describing something similar in Wars of the Jews. The proper title is actually The Jewish War, not Wars of the Jews. And there are 7 books that have a chapter 8 in them. Not one describes anything similar to what we might ask. And we might add that Jesus did not use the word Abba on the cross. He didn't. We find another quote of the ridiculous people. We find the Egyptian mentioned in Acts 21:38 and also in Josephus. The Egyptian reference was Piezo. Right, now he's Egyptian. Philo of Alexandria. They'll take any word that starts with P and ends in O and claim it. Oh my goodness, not reading any more of that. Solomon had hundreds of foreign wives. How do we conclude this descent? You will be relieved to know as well, in the New Testament, Jesus attempted to jump from the temple in the exact same place that we find described in Josephus. Described where? It isn't said. They don't even give a reference. They just hope you'll just believe them blindly, which people will do as long as it's against the Bible. So, anyway, another quote, apparently God is going to hell in Matthew 5:22. Jesus says, whoever shall say thou fool shall be in danger of the fire of hell. In other words, Jesus says that he who says thou fool should be in danger of hellfire, and then God says thou fool. So God is in danger of hell. This is either a joke or an egregious error, or really bad reading comprehension. The former fool is moros, the word in Greek, and the latter, and in 1 Corinthians, is aphron. They're not even the same word in Greek. These folks also claim all manner of sexual jokes behind the New Testament text. I'm not going to go into that. Roman brothels. A reader wrote to one of these folks and got some interesting information. Christianity was a social movement, top-heavy by proportion with members of the middle and upper class, they say. Well, no, it wasn't. It started out with the poor, the dregs. Those are the people Jesus chose. Not all of them, but many of them. The Piezo family has an answer. Why does it seem that the Romans hated Christianity? After all, didn't they throw the Christians to the lions? Yes, they did. Last thing the Romans rulers wanted were for the slaves to catch on to the fact that the Romans wrote the New Testament. Really? If they said, here, slaves, is a religion made just for you, and we endorse it, the slaves would have done anything but become Christians. Isn't that obvious? And then they say it's a facade that the Romans dislike Christianity. No, people were not fed to lions as a facade. And they go on to other ridiculous claims of facades and dynasties and conspiracies. I mean, if you want more details, have fun reading this garbage. That they're just reading the quotes. And he got a reply from one. When I told a classical scholar of our acquaintances of the Roman Piezo theorem, his response was, what? With enough question marks to go off screen, and remarked that such people were not worth responding to. I slightly disagree, assuming one seeks a certain entertainment value. And this is what we got from the lead theorist, whose name we cannot discern, so we would just call him the leader of the Piezo theory. The leader titles his response. In other words, he's shouting, a reply by the New Classical Scholarship, NCS, regarding the authorship of the New Testament by the Roman Piezo family. To begin, and throughout his response, he seemed particularly and petulantly offended that, he thinks, we did not know that he calls his school of thought the New Classical Scholarship. He made that up. There's nothing new or classical. Most people, real scholars, would say neoclassical if they were talking about a certain era. We did know that he uses this name, and it is of no moment, no concern, no worth. Give me 20 minutes and I'll start a cost-free website advertising the new quantum physics, revealing that all of quantum physics as we understand it is wrong, and the atoms actually spell out secretly coded messages laying out a new theory of physics. That's the order of absurdity of the Piezo theory. So he goes on and on about how this guy's claim to a title is as ridiculous as the rest of his claims. The leader assures us that his new classical scholarship takes care of everything and has discovered so much the old scholarship doesn't know. But wait a minute, why is it every time somebody wants to critique the Bible or dismiss it, they go to older documents? Those old ones are good, but not this old one, the Bible. Absolute nonsense, hypocrisy, double standards, every name you can throw at it, they deserve. Anyway, Oliver's note about the Romans' names is not actually addressed. Rather, we are treated to a story about how the royal Romans made use of aliases. And they had conclaves with each other to plot against the common people. No, they didn't. They just smashed them. Not one scintilla of proof offered, other than the same begged question that a conspiracy is afoot. This is what happens. It's kind of a, jumping on the bandwagon of conspiracy that people say, if I've been fooled about this, what else have I been fooled about? And that's a legitimate question, but then they throw out the baby with the bathwater. They decide that absolutely everything is a false history, which they do arbitrarily. They're not even asking for evidence, not even supplying any. Are we having trouble with the stream? I have excellent connection here. Is there anyone else having trouble? Stream working, as far as I can tell. Okay, so I will go on. In terms of using a cost-free website as a medium, as opposed to peer-reviewed journals, we're told that this is being adverse to those who are not spending money just to have a website. Anyway, deeper than that, has nothing to do with money, etc., etc. He says, give me 10 minutes in a public library and I'll have a site up selling cancer cures and people will buy it, and I'll be out of town with a lot of money before the police can come. If the Piezo theory has a worthy word to say, then why isn't anything he says recorded in the Journal of Roman Studies? Calling such venues representative of old scholarship is not an answer. You have to demonstrate that they're wrong. Calling them biased is not an answer. Calling it valuable information begs the question. Likewise, from the scholar from Penn, designating the scholar from Penn as ignorant and biased, and after designating the member of that skeptical list as putting your head in the sand, claiming that his new scholarship will replace the idea of history as we know it. Gosh, where have we heard that before in the conspiracy realm? Bear in mind how easy it would be to do the same promoting a new quantum physics. So, we just don't understand. That's a catchphrase we're all familiar with. And it is said, real scholars do not laugh at new ideas, they investigate. Yes. So if I go to MIT right now and give them the new idea that atoms actually spell out secret messages, I suppose they should investigate and try to understand. There's a level, what the point is here, sometimes things are so absurd and so laughable that even giving them a moment of your time means that the person fooling you has won. And you should be embarrassed. Which is why I don't chase down every crazy idea that people throw at me. There was some years ago when somebody came to our Sunday live stream. I wasn't talking about the crucifixion. And he screamed at me in all caps in the chat that I was not listening to his really cool, sensible idea that Jesus didn't die on the cross. I've heard all the theories on that. I don't need to give such a ridiculous claim the time of day. And it's my channel and I'm doing a live stream on another topic. But this is the kind of thing that people want to do to waste your time and make you investigate things that are absolutely ridiculous with nothing to back them up, like this Piezo theory. Now where we get to, he says, where I quoted a Piezo sympathetic website about Arius Calpurnius Piezo as a Roman general who captured Jerusalem, the leader immediately distances himself from the quote, saying it is from a place that is not an official new classical scholarship site. He says, oh, my article was a profile of people using this entire family of claims. Official, one free website, or one unofficial, made no difference to me in context. Not that it matters by his own logic, since when does the leader have the right to dismiss such people? We may say, why don't you instead be a real scholar and try to investigate and understand this variation on the theory? In other words, there are differences among the Piezo theorists, and this guy won't even listen to them. Double standard. So, anyway, this goes on for a long time, and I really do want to get on to more of these topics. So, not worth your time to invest. If you want to investigate it, here's your one-stop shop for all things Piezo theory. As he concludes here, sober scholarship is obviously not on the docket here. So, there you go, everything you didn't want to know about the Piezo theory, because it's absolutely ridiculous. All right, I'm going to look real quick at the chat, and then we'll go on to a couple more topics today, and maybe next time we'll go over some more other ones. Let's see. If you had a wrench. Oh, okay. If you have a link that you want me to see, please put it under this live stream video, and I'm more likely to see it than I am in the chat here later after this thing closes. Let's see what else we got in the chat. Yeah, your initials are JC. I mean, seriously. All right, more linkies. There are folks who are not Christians who fall for this, absolutely. It's a great example why we need to know correct doctrine so that we won't be swayed by such foolishness. Absolutely. And again, you can just point them to this article. I mean, or just ask them, what evidence do you have besides leading questions, such as, don't you suppose, or wouldn't it be? Ask them if they have any actual historical documents to back up their historical claim. They're making a claim about something that was written 2,000 years ago, the New Testament, so let them get documents from that era proving this Piezo family existed in that time and had any sort of evidence of connection to the New Testament. They can't do it. Yeah, exactly, about flat earthers. It's the flat earth community is into all kinds of nonsense. They're thinking themselves awake. They'll fall for this stuff because they think the Bible is one in the things to be thrown away as history, and yet they will go to Sumerian or Babylonian or any number of earlier historical documents and say, these are the truth. Wait a minute, that's all history. You can't go to any artifacts, any documents, but current, if you want to make a disclaimer against the Bible because it's part of a lie of history. You have to prove lie of history, and you have to prove that none of it happened and that it was all a fabrication, and yet you believe this Piezo crap? I got no respect for people like that. So, New World Translation is from the Jehovah's Witnesses. I wouldn't trust that at all, and I could probably throw a copy of that pretty far, so I'm not going to say I wouldn't trust it any farther than I could throw it, because I could hurl that thing. But no, the New World Translation, nobody knows who the translators were, and they do blatant errors with the Greek. Let's see. Not sure what the buffering thing was. The so-called ISS just doesn't appeal to me, okay. Looking down in the comments, some more superfluid, however, heavens, okay. So, yeah, it'll make you hurl in more ways than one. Let's go. I wanted to read these verses before I go on to more parts of the document, which I had from here. Acts 20:29 says, I know as soon as I'm out of reach, oppressive wolves will invade you and show no mercy to the flock. 2 Peter 2:1, yet false prophets came among the people. There will also be false teachers among you. They will smuggle in ruinous teachings and even disown the one who bought them and owns them, so they will bring sudden destruction upon themselves. 1 John 4:2, here's the test. If the Spirit affirms that Jesus, the Anointed One, came in the flesh, it's from God. If it denies this, it's not from God, but from the impostor Anointed One, also known the Antichrist, that you've heard is coming, and in fact is already in the world. And again, we're not going to change the tangent much right now, but people will say, oh, see, there isn't one, the Antichrist. But that's not what it says in Greek. He's saying both. The Antichrist and not either or. Okay, it doesn't mean that because there's many that there isn't one. bad logic again. Anyway, let's go on to 1 Timothy 6:20. Timothy, protected, deposited, and trusted you. Turn aside from these profane and empty words and the opposition of what is falsely called knowledge. Notice that in the Greek word is gnosis, and that's where we get the term Gnosticism. That's what the Bible is talking about by description, what is falsely called knowledge. And the word is the ordinary Greek word for knowledge, and not science as it has become changed in meaning since the 1600s when the King James was done. It was a general word for knowledge. It was how you would translate gnosis from Greek to English. But now science means something more particular. And that's not what the Bible is talking about here. The Bible is talking about false knowledge, Gnosticism, which some have professed so authoritatively, like these Piezo people. They have missed the mark concerning the faith. And then Revelation 2:24, I say this to rest in Thyatira and others to the churches who do not hold to this teaching, who have not known the so-called deep things of Satan. That's what adversary, Satanas, I think it's os, in Greek, means adversary. The deep things of Satan is what these people are passing around, especially Gnosticism. So, the Bible does warn us against these things. There's no doubt about it. There are the verses. So now we're going to try in the next 20 minutes to cover a few more things, one of those being the serpent seed. I have that here. This is the teaching that when God set hostility, or enmity is the early modern English word, between the seed and the seed of the serpent in Genesis 3:13, he was predicting that her son Cain, who was the first murderer, Genesis 4:8, would begin the genetic line of Satan among humans. That's what the teaching says, serpent seed theory. This is based on the presumption that Eve eating the forbidden fruit was a euphemism for committing adultery with the serpent, the offspring being Cain. It arose from Kabbalistic teachings and gave rise to unbiblical movements such as Christian identity, the Kenites, Kinism, and British Israelism. This belief boils down to there being one superior race of pure humans and another of hybrid human-Satan genetics. Anyone who disagrees with the group's theology is simply labeled seed of Satan and dismissed as unsavable. I've seen people do this. So, when somebody says there is a literal seed line of Satan, show them this. The Bible doesn't support it. It doesn't come from the Bible. It comes from the Kabbalism teachings, which are Jewish myths that the Bible warns us about. This teaching is easily debunked by Genesis 4:1, which states plainly that Adam was the father of Cain. And before I go on, the only way anyone can claim otherwise is to take, I think, one text from one part of the world that isn't as clear and leaves it open to interpretation, and they take that as where they can shoehorn in their serpent seed theory. They ignore all the other documentary evidence, all the attestation. They just sweep it away and take the one that isn't clear and say this proves that no, Adam was not the father of Cain. But it says in every ancient document you can find, except that one that isn't clear but doesn't say serpent seed, it's just a little bit of leeway for them. They take that and run with it. But Genesis 4:1 says Adam's the father of Cain. We might also point out that Adam ate the forbidden fruit as well. Yet no one claims this means he committed an immoral act with the serpent. And if every instance of eating fruit or being beguiled is taken this way, it quickly becomes obvious that the meaning is preposterous. If you put that into other context, it never fits. A similar contextual problem faces the theory in the New Testament whenever the phrase children of the devil is seen, such as 1 John 3:12. It's an argument from silence. It imposes external religious texts on the Bible, and it makes lies out of the Bible's clear statements about God loving the whole world, without exception, and not wanting any to perish. John 3:16, 2 Peter 3:9. And we also have this article. I'll just grab the link real quick and give you that. Is Cain the serpent seed? We're back in 1 John this morning, continuing our study. We want to skip verse 12 today. Next, we'll come back. Anyway, we should not be like Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother. 1 John 3:12. Cain, who was of the evil one. Those who hold to the serpent seed doctrine take this to mean that Cain was literally fathered by Satan. And in doing so, they are maligning the character of Eve at the same time. This is quite misogynistic. The NIV Cultural Background Study Bible says this on verse 12. Jewish tradition extensively elaborated and underlined Cain's sinfulness. It belonged to the evil one. A murderer was a child of the devil, for one of the devil's first work had been to bring death to Adam. Some later Jewish texts even claim that Cain's father was the devil himself. This is where it's coming from. Jewish myths. Where do we see something about Jewish myths? I don't know if I have it in this section. I know there's one that says something about Jewish myths. Anyway, it might be a different translation. But let me try to summarize what this doctrine actually teaches, often called the serpent seed, the dual seed, or the two seedline doctrine. It's a teaching which explains the biblical account of the fall of man by saying that the sin of Eve was not simple disobedience, but sexual contact with the serpent, and that Cain was the son of Eve and the devil. Again, this is slanderous against Eve. Not to mention against God, but we'll continue here. Cain's descendants are, according to this idea, sons of Satan, and this includes most any race or group that the serpent seed believer chooses to dislike. Therein lies the problem. The serpent seed doctrine is also closely related to other erroneous beliefs, such as Christian identity. The serpent seed teaching was popularized by William Branham, 1909 to 1965. He was an American preacher, faith healer, initiated post-World War II healing revival. There's a lot of error in that as well. He's said to have left a lasting impact on televangelism. Well, that's not helping his reputation. And the modern charismatic movement, ouch, and is recognized as the principal architect of restorationist thought, which is Christian Reconstructionism, basically, for charismatics by some Christian historians. At the time they were held, this interdenominational meetings were the largest religious meetings ever held in some American cities. Error always attracts a crowd. His ministry reached global, sorry, not my term, audiences with major campaigns held in all these places. Claimed to have received an angelic visitation. Gosh, where have we heard that before? Joseph Smith, Mormonism. Let me see, Mohammed claimed an angelic visitation. There seems to be a trend here. I think I'm seeing a pattern. Anyway, this vision, he said he had commissioned his worldwide ministry, launched his campaigning career. His fame spread rapidly. Crowds drawn to his stories of angelic visitations. What does the Bible say about people claiming to have had visions of angels? That they become puffed up or conceited. And a curse was pronounced on anyone who would bring a different gospel, even if it allegedly came from an angel. And reports of miracles happening. This goes on today. By 1960, he transitioned into a teaching ministry. Many of his followers accepted his sermons as oral scripture and referred to his teachings as the message. Gosh, there's a translation called the message that I wouldn't recommend because it's very new agey. He claimed to be a prophet with the anointing of Elijah to herald Christ's second coming. His teachings continue to be promoted through William Branham Association. Here's his own quote. Here's what really happened in the Garden of Eden. The word says that Eve was beguiled by the serpent. It means deceived. She was actually seduced. Changed the meaning of the word. Equivocation fallacy by the serpent. He was so close to being human, another baseless claim, that his seed could and did mingle with that of the woman and cause her to conceive. When this happened, God cursed the serpent. He may not be the first to preach the serpent's seed, but he has become known as one of the major proponents. So if you hear the name William Branham, don't give it a second thought. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field. Serpent here is from the Hebrew word nakash, which according to Hebrew scholar Michael Heiser, we've heard that name before, is most likely a triple entendre, which is a word or phrase with three different meanings at once. The root is a noun, which is a basis for a noun, a verb, and an adjective in Hebrew. If you take it as a noun, the word would mean serpent. This is a valid translation. But he says, you must keep in mind that serpent is not a member of the animal kingdom. What? The Bible says it is. And we'll get back to that. Have you ever wondered, wow, big red flag here, why so many of God's enemies are described with serpent-like language? They want you to fill in blanks here. But this is the guy, this article is making some points, but I'm going to critique him on his mistakes. Anyway, think of Job's Leviathan, Revelation's dragon, Daniel's beast from the sea. Daniel had mentioned other beasts, not just serpents. Why was it a serpent that came to tempt Adam and Eve? The Bible doesn't say. We mustn't fill in the blanks. The Bible uses all kinds of images to talk about spiritual forces of evil, serpents, dragons, sea monsters, and other creatures of chaos. It also uses wolves. The serpent here is Genesis 3, is a chaos monster. I mean, yeah, it brought chaos, but that doesn't mean the word serpent means chaos monster. Okay. So in Genesis 3, we have it causing chaos, but in 3:15, God pronounces a coming deliverer who will crush the serpent. I don't know, we don't need to add of chaos and destroy man to God's presence. Okay, back to it being a triple entendre. If you take it as a verb, it would mean deceiver or diviner. But keep in mind which things come first, because it may be based on the serpent being the deceiver in this early scenario that came in time culturally to be a euphemism for deception, or that they would use the snake as a personification of deception. Anyway, but that's not what it meant originally. It was literally a serpent. This also fits the story. Hang on to this meaning is important in the serpent seed doctrine. Sometimes I'm not clear in this article whether the guy is saying his own thoughts or the other people's, so just that disclaimer. An adjective would mean bronze or shining one, which is the more literal, the meaning, if you take it as an adjective, but adjectives describe nouns. A shining what? So why would it say a shining came to her? If it means shining one, then it's a noun, not an adjective. So take this with a grain of salt. But shining one is a legitimate translation, but it, again, is as a noun, not an adjective. Luminosity, the characteristic of a divine being, ancient Near East text, not the characteristic of an animal or a man. But there's holes in this argument. Let me get back to that. They claim this is a divine being, not a member of the animal kingdom, but a member of the divine council. Heiser loves his divine council. But what I say is, in Hebrew, I looked up and not just me, I'm just telling you what my research is. In Hebrew, interlinears, if you look it up, serpent craftier than any beast of the field is the phrase, craftier than any beast. But the Septuagint, the Greek, says the shrewdest of all the wild beasts. Ergo, it was an animal, not a divine being, as the article claims, but likely possessed by Satan. So, he's already admitted, Heiser has admitted, that there's a triple possibility here, that if it's a verb, it means serpent. If it's an adjectival form of some sort, it means a shining one. But which it means is here he's arguing circular argument, because he's saying, well, I'm going to pick the adjective form and read it back into the text as not an animal. And that's where he's making his logical leap, which I think he's in error about. He knows the language, but logic, in my opinion, isn't Heiser's strong suit. Or theology is not his strong suit, because he doesn't take much of anything in the Bible literally, which makes you wonder, like I've said before, how does he take the resurrection of Jesus from the dead as literal? Because it's a miracle and it violates quote-unquote science. He has no justification for making an exception in that case, which is the special pleading fallacy. So the problem is not whether Jesus rose from the dead, it's Heiser's apparently low view of Scripture in taking it as the Word of God. He has described God as giving error, inspired, because people couldn't handle the truth yet. Anyway, this is convoluted logic. Because like I said, even if you look at the Septuagint, it says, shrewdest of all the wild beasts, so it's numbered among the wild beasts. The Hebrew is less clear, but it's being compared to any beast. Why would you say a divine being is craftier than any beast of the field? That makes no sense. I mean, it's too obvious to say. Why is the Bible even saying this? It's the question. Remember I've said before about asking the right questions? Why did the Bible say the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field if the serpent wasn't a beast? It's a duh. It's like saying Adam and Eve were more crafty than any beast. Of course they were. There was none. They're equal. Or any angel. Why would you have to say that an angel is more crafty than any beast? The fact that it's being said at all is telling us that this serpent is to be taken as a noun, as an animal. The serpent is an animal, not a shining one. Heiser is quite simply wrong here. He hasn't asked the right questions. They're calling this one a watcher. Now, watcher is a term from Enoch. It's not a biblical term. But fallen angels is a biblical term. And of course, Satan himself was fallen, one of the fallen angels, the chief of them. Not on any divine counsel. But of course he chose to oppose Yahweh's plans. His sin was pride. I will be like the Most High. And the way he could get back at him, the way he could try to usurp God's authority as God, was to get God backed into a corner, into an impossible situation, a rock and a hard place, where he would have to violate his holiness if he just let mankind off for his sin, or he would violate his love by punishing man forever, even though the sin came by trickery as it did. But he never anticipated the solution in Genesis 3:15, the seed of the woman. The woman that he beguiled would have the last laugh. So, be careful what you read, even in a debunking thing like this. So, and they go on to put words in that, ascribe that Eve made something up, and she always gets the short end of the stick in any Christian documents. But here we have the anti-Christians doing the same thing and inventing this serpent seed theory, which is quite Gnostic and Kabbalistic. Anyway, he goes on to explain why eating the fruit is not a euphemism for any kind of adultery or anything like that. And you can read through that if you want. I'm not going to put any more time in it, but let's get back to here because I wanted to go on to theosophy. According to some sources, and I'm sorry I'm running out of time. I don't have time to go through too many questions in the chat. If there's an urgent question, either put it in all caps and Chow can try to get my attention, or one of the other mods, Divergent Droid, or put it under the video. According to sources such as Encyclopedia Britannica, theosophy is the name of a Gnostic Neoplatonic belief system. So Gnostic, Neoplatonic, basically, if you trace it all the way back to its roots, is Luciferian. Going back to Mani, remember Mani, Manichaeism, whichever way you want to pronounce it. I get used to trying to say things, the CH sound in Greek, but that's where Augustine came out of, but not completely, and that's where he got the idea of original sin, which is what led straight to Calvin. Calvin went straight to Augustine to get his original sin theories. I think Calvinism named, what's been named after him, that he didn't choose that, but he's the chief proponent of it. But he's basically teaching this Gnostic Neoplatonic idea from Mani. Anyway, a 3rd century self-proclaimed prophet or sage. Later branches include Freemasonry and the New Age movement. How many people do we know, even in the Flat Earth community, who denounce Freemasonry, yet promote Gnosticism? Oh, don't look at this, this branch over here. Look at this branch. This is the true branch. But they all come from the same root. Emphasis on meditation, enlightenment, and consciousness. Those are favorite New Age terms. One of the more influential theosophists was Helena Blavatsky, who practiced occultism and helped to introduce the teachings to the Western world. This is also what the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi did through the Beatles primarily, and there was another one, can't remember his name, who promoted also transcendental meditation. These are just westernized terms for, just as yoga is for Eastern meditation and other religious techniques. Ignorance of this religion allows it easy infiltration into Christian churches. For example, the name Saint Germain, if you don't know that, is mistaken for a great Christian of the past instead of the mystical and charismatic adept and alchemist he actually was. He went by many names as well. Ironically, some who extol the alleged virtues of these theosophists, such as Blavatsky or Manly P. Hall, steeped in Luciferianism, both of them, claim at the same time to oppose and denounce Freemasonry, as I mentioned. It's a head fake, a bait and switch. Bad Freemasonry, good Theosophy, good Saint Germain, good Blavatsky, good Manly P. Hall, but no Freemasonry. No, not that. It's a game for the ignorant to fall for. Religions masquerading as scientific or healthy have had similar success in infiltrating Christian communities via Hindu practices. Yes, they are, such as yoga or transcendental meditation, or renamed variants, such as the prayer labyrinth, got a link here for you, centering prayer, and the silence. These are not biblical teachings, they're anti-biblical. They may make people feel better, they may even lead to some healing, just as Reiki can heal people, but it's absolutely demonic power. And finally, I'm going to go over real quickly the claim, "You are all gods." We've done zeitgeist before. I might look at that. We can stay a little bit over, right? In Psalm 82:6, the gods were human leaders who would die like anyone else. So if you read Psalm 82, you'll see that these people, I have said you're gods, but you'll die like men. Because they're mortals. All right? And the term was used for royalty or leaders who were acting in the place of God. Okay? In John 10:34, Jesus uses this as a legal loophole to counter the charge of blasphemy that the Pharisees have brought against them. We're going to stone you for claiming you're God. Even though that was the charge that ultimately got him crucified, right now he's saying, oh, these are legalists. I'm going to use their own tactics on them and say, hey, wait a minute. I can find a legal loophole. It says here in the Psalms that we're all gods. So how can you commit me? How can you say I've committed a crime? How can you accuse me when I can point to a scripture that says we're all gods? He was messing with their heads. That's the context in which Jesus quotes that. But again, if you look at Psalm 82, obviously God, that isn't saying that everyone's a god. To paraphrase a part of the animated film The Incredibles, where Syndrome says, when everyone's super, no one will be. If everyone's a god, no one is. It loses all meaning. And as I've said to people who claim to be gods, okay, walk across the ocean. Let me see you do it. Oh, you can't? You can't raise the dead? You can't make the blind see? Just by touching them or saying a word? You're not God. Anyway, Jesus didn't say everybody's a god. Neither did Psalm 82. And I have a commentary here if you'd like to pursue it. This is Constable's commentary where he says the same thing. So I'm not making this up. And just real quick about zeitgeist, these are claims that the Bible borrowed stories from other religions. There's a skeptic project debunking zeitgeist again. So I've referred in the things I've talked about today to skeptics, to Christ deniers, Christ mythicists, all sorts of people who are not predisposed to say anything I agree with. And yet when it comes to any of the things we talked about, the Piezo theory, serpent seed theory, or it's Titus 1:14 that talks about Jewish fables. I'm not sure why I didn't I have that here? No, silly me. Let's go 13 to 17, just to get that real quick. Expose them decisively that they may be made healthy in the faith. That's the word in Greek is healthy. Not listening to Judaic myths and the rules of people who turn from the truth. Everything is clean to those who are clean, but nothing is clean to those whose mind and conscience is tainted. They claim they have a familiarity with God, but yet by their actions they deny it. They are repulsive and incorrigible and good for nothing. Don't waste your time on those people. All right. Thanks for the link, Chow. Also, all the links anybody posted. Is there anything I need to look at in the chat before we sign off here today? And I know I keep leaning and going off camera sometimes, but I moved my camera over a little bit because the watermark when the video plays back is over on the same spot as the camera, so I thought I'd better move it. Not that anybody needs to see me, but there you go. Anyway, I have this green screen. I'm going to use it. So, let me see if there's anything bring to my attention real quick. Looks like you were talking about other things. ISS. Let's see. Serpent, cold-blooded. Smiles using his tongue, changes skin, allows its... Yeah. Yeah, why serpent? Not kidding. It's a good point. I mean... There's a gazillion reasons why the serpent should come to represent deception or anything bad, because, and we take, especially in early American history, there's the speaking with forked tongue, or we would say speaking out of both sides of your mouth. So serpents were used to that because their tongue is forked. It's like they're saying two different things, two contradictory things. So there's a gazillion reasons, and serpent and dragon, yes, they're both reptilian as far as we can tell. But, Satan is also described as a fake angel of light, as a lion looking for people to devour. We read about the wolves that were scattering the flock. So, anyway, the point being in that thing about the serpent, the word serpent, is that there's no reason to take it as shining one there. It is part of the animal kingdom. There's no reason to have that statement in Genesis 3 unless, if it was being compared to to a divine being of any sort. So, like I said, Heiser is wrong on that. Who am I? Well, I'm sorry, but having a doctorate in languages doesn't get you out of criticism for your theology or your logic. Just as the people of Berea in the book of Acts didn't care about Paul's credentials. He was a Pharisee, very highly educated, and they went home every night after they heard him speak and checked the scriptures to see if what he said was true. Nobody's above scrutiny. Okay? Now, I would, if I wanted to know something about Chaldee or the Hebrew language or something like that, I would ask Heiser about the meanings of words, and he can give me all his possibilities, and I'll say, well, contextually, your interpretation doesn't make any sense, but you can tell me what the words are. I'm relying on experts to tell me what the words are in Hebrew, what they mean, what their parts of speech are, because I don't know those things. So we rely on experts for a lot of things, but we have to remember they're human too, and they make mistakes, and they have prejudices, and blind spots. So anyway, unless there's something very pressing in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and shut down. We've gone a little bit over, but I think it was worth it. I don't know what I'll do next time, whether we'll go over more things in the topical quick references, because a lot of this we've covered. So if you have any requests, you can put them under the video for next time. I love that quote from William Tyndale that says, "I will cause a boy who drives the plow to know more of the scriptures than the Pope." Exactly. That's people were trying to make it impossible for the commoners to have the Bible in their own hands so they could be Bereans. The authorities, the church authorities, didn't like that sort of thing. And there's not much difference today in terms of people not wanting to be questioned once they have a title. Anyway, but there is room for respect for people and cordiality. So it isn't an excuse to be poorly behaved. It's just saying that we need to keep our eyes open no matter who we're reading. So, yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks the mods for handling things, and everybody for coming. We only averaged about 12 people today, but if that's all the number of people who know this channel exists and are interested in depth in the Bible, then so be it. So, that's all we got today. Thank you all for coming, and we'll think of something for next week. We'll see y'all then.